What if the weakest ability in the world was actually a loaded gun nobody knew how to read? Nobody laughed at me for long. By the end, they were the ones counting my name. My name is Jace, and on the day I awakened, the whole hall watched my future turn gray. Not silver, not black, not red like a dragon core, not blue like a saint's blessing. Just gray, the color of a rock someone dipped in dirty dishwater and called it destiny. The awakening hall went quiet for half a breath, and then everyone laughed. I stood on the glowing circle with my palm pressed against the crystal, watching a message float in the air. Skill acquired, +1 experience point per action, rank F. That was it. No fire, no sword aura, no holy light, no wings made of mana. One tiny point of experience every single time I did something. The examiner stared at the words like blinking harder might change them. Behind me, Harper's crimson flames were still crawling up the walls from her own awakening. Her skill was Fire Dragon, rank S, and it had taken 5 water mages just to save the ceiling. Owen had awakened Sword Aura, rank S, and sliced a steel dummy in half by breathing near it. Gran had awakened Chain Lightning, rank S, and his first spark crawled the floor like a hungry snake. Then it was my turn. +1 experience. I pulled my hand back. A tiny chime rang in my skull. +1 experience. The laughter got louder. Someone said I had earned experience for being disappointing. Someone else called out that if I cried hard enough, I might level up by next year. I smiled like it didn't hurt. It hurt so much I almost forgot to breathe. Then I breathed. +1 experience. My smile froze. I breathed again. +1 experience. I blinked. +1 experience. I swallowed. +1 experience. The examiner was already waving me off the circle before I understood what had just happened. Harper gave me a look that wasn't cruel, just confused, like I had fallen through a trapdoor no one else could see. Owen tried to clap for me, because that was who Owen was. But one lonely clap in a room full of laughter only made it worse. Grant leaned close as I stepped down from the circle. Rank F suits you, he said. Some people get chosen, some people just get counted. He snapped his fingers, and electricity crawled over his knuckles like a warning. I looked at him. +1 experience. By the time I walked out of that hall, everyone believed I had the most useless skill in the city. By the time I reached the bottom of the stairs, I had already gained more than the entire laughing crowd understood. And by the time the sun went down, I had stopped feeling cursed. I had started feeling hungry. The world I lived in ran on one simple rule: kill monsters, clear dungeons, grow stronger. Levels came from danger, and danger belonged to people with real skills, not to gray rocks like me. That first night, alone in my room, I did the most heroic thing any doomed rank F had ever attempted. I paced in circles until my legs went numb. Step +1 experience. Step +1 experience. Step +1 experience. At first it was funny, pathetic, but funny. A hamster with debt, walking laps around his own bed. My floorboards creaked. My little wall clock ticked. My skill chimed until the sound became a rainstorm inside my head. At 100 experience, I leveled up. A warm pulse rolled through my bones. Level 2. Available stat points, 3. I froze so suddenly I nearly fell over. Everyone knew how leveling worked. It came from monsters, from real danger, from pleading for it. I had just leveled up walking laps around my own bed. I put 1 point into agility, 1 into stamina, 1 into perception, and the room got sharp around me. I could hear water dripping through the wall next door. I could feel the fibers of my socks like tiny roads under my feet. By midnight, I was level 3. By morning, I had discovered the terrible truths. First, sleep counted as an action. Second, turning over in my sleep counted too. I woke up level 4, drooling, pillow on the floor, grinning so hard my cheeks ached. Then I sneezed. +1 experience. I laughed. +1 experience. I laughed harder. +1 experience. That was the moment I stopped calling my skill useless. A useless skill gives you nothing. Mine gave me something for everything. The next few days became the strangest training the world had never seen. I brushed my teeth with both hands, alternating every 5 strokes. I tapped each finger against my thumb while walking. I did breathing drills until my lungs felt like bellows. I cooked breakfast 1 grain of rice at a time just to see if the skill cared. It cared. Pick up grain, +1. Drop grain in pot, +1. Stir, +1. Burn tongue, +1. I tied a spoon to my wrist with string so every step made it swing and tap a cup. And every tap counted. I practiced blinking 1 eye at a time. I bought a jump rope and used it until it snapped. Every action made me faster. Every point of agility meant more steps per minute. More steps meant more actions. More actions meant more experience. More experience meant more levels. My gray little skill was not useless. It was a snowball kicked off the top of a mountain. On the fourth day, Owen finally came to check on me. He found chalk marks on the floor, 3 jump ropes tied together, and a pot of rice fused into 1 black brick. "Have you joined a cult?" he asked slowly. "No," I said. "I started one." He had awakened Ranka's sword aura, but he hadn't changed. Loose hoodies, lost shoes, apologies to furniture he bumped into. I told him enough of the truth to worry him properly. "What level are you now?" he asked. I hesitated. 9. Owen dropped the snack bag he was carrying. Most awakened students stayed level 1 for weeks. I had jumped 8 levels with bedroom laps and cursed rice. "You need to tell someone," he said. "I need to tell no one," I answered. Huge things get taken. Small things get laughed at. I like being laughed at. Laughing people show their teeth, and they close their eyes. A week after my awakening, the academy ran its first combat assessment. It was designed to humiliate people like me, so of course the arena was packed. Students filled the benches, sorted by rank. Gold and black for the S ranks, blue for the rest. Gray for me. Grant were black and gold like a warning sign. Already the favorite of guild recruiters watching from the balcony. The first test was simple: hit the target dummy as hard as you can. Harper's flames became a dragon around her fist, and the dummy exploded across the arena in a shower of molten wood. Owen sliced a replacement dummy into 4 pieces without ever touching it. Grant's lightning punch clean through a chest plate and left it smoking. Then my name was called. A few people laughed before I even moved. I was only level 17. Not strong enough to crush the dummy with raw power, not yet. But strength was only part of the game. The rest was rhythm, angles, and making people misread what they were seeing. I tapped my right foot, +1. Left foot, +1. The crowd laughed. Is he dancing? Yes, that was exactly the point. I stepped in and swung my stick. Not once, but 37 times. One blurred motion to every eye but mine. To me, it was a staircase. Ankle joint, +1. Knee hinge, +1. Hip pin, +1. Chest seam, +1. The dummy was built to measure force, not to survive being dismantled joint by joint. My final strike hit the already loosened chest seam with everything my tiny rank F body had. The dummy folded like a tired umbrella, and for 1 perfect second, nobody in that arena spoke. Then the score crystal lit up. Structural collapse. "That was not power," the instructor said. "I know," I answered. "It was cheaper." The whispers started then, not cheers, whispers, and whispers spread like an infection. The next test was reaction speed, 20 floating lights, 10 seconds to strike as many as possible. Harper hit 16. Owen hit 18. Grant chain lightning through all 20. Grant called out that I shouldn't level up just for missing. I hit 19 with my own body, and the 20th light spun out of its zone from the air pressure of my stick. The instructor checked his device like it had personally insulted him. "It counts," he finally admitted. That was the day I learned something dangerous. Being underestimated was safe. Being noticed was expensive. And I had just made myself very, very noticed. I didn't know it yet, but somewhere across that arena, Grant had already stopped seeing me as a joke. He was starting to see me as a problem, and problems, in his world, got removed. 3 older students cornered me behind the storage building after the test, curious about my trick. "Show us the dummy thing," one of them said, twirling a dagger. I looked around, empty yards, stone wall to rusty trash bins, a cracked broom leaning by the door. Perfect. Clever doesn't mean avoiding a fight. Clever means choosing exactly how it starts. I let him grab my collar. +1. He shoved me into the wall. +1. Pain burst through my shoulder. +1. The other two relaxed and laughed, and that relaxation was the only opening I needed. I kicked the cracked broom, caught the snapped half, and tapped the nerve inside his wrist until the dagger fell. I headbutted him, used his own shirt as a rope, and planted both feet in the second attacker's chest. He flew backward into the third, and they crashed together into the trash bins. The dagger boy recovered and threw a punch. I let it land on my cheek. +1. I smiled with blood on my teeth. "Thanks," I said. He paused. Fear needs very little space to grow. I hit him 7 times with the broken broom in less than a second, and he dropped where he stood. When the academy guards arrived, they found 3 attackers tied together with their own belts, and me sitting cheerfully on a trash bin. Getting punched counted, dodging counted, provoking a bad person into a bad decision counted too if I survived it. My skill didn't make me invincible, but every mistake my enemy made became my profit. Grant heard about the fight before lunch, and by evening the whole academy had a different rumor for it. I spent the next month turning my life into a machine. Wake, breathe, tap, walk the long way, cook, clean, repeat. At level 25, I unlocked my first upgrade, Action Chain. Every 100 different actions granted bonus experience. Repetition was good, but variety was better. So I became the most annoying person in the entire academy. I walked backward to class. I opened doors with my elbow. I carried cups balanced on my head. I trained with chopsticks, ropes, coins, stones, and one terrified rubber duck Owen gave me as a joke. The instructors hated it. The students copied it for exactly one day, gained nothing, and hated it more. At level 30, my strength finally caught up to my tricks. At level 35, I could see mana ripple like heat. At level 40, raindrops looked lazy compared to my own reflexes. At level 42, I discovered that fear itself was an action. If I forced myself to step forward through it, that mattered, because my first real dungeon opened 3 days later. It was a low-grade gate beneath an abandoned mall, the kind used to train new students. Harper led the S-rank team, Owen walked beside her, and Grant came along just to be watched winning. I was assigned to supply duty, carrying rope and water while pretending not to exist. Stay behind the S-ranks, the instructor said. Do not engage. Sure, I answered. I engaged with every pebble I stepped over. Inside, the tunnel smelled like wet iron and moss. Green crystals lit the walls, and every footstep echoed too loudly. For goblins dropped from the ceiling. Harper burned 2 before they landed. Owen and Grant finished the rest. There are 8 more, I said. They laughed, thinking I was joking. Then 8 more dropped. I threw a water flask, kicked a loose stone, pulled the supply rope tied across the tunnel, and 4 goblins tripped at once. Harper's fire swept over them. How did you know? She asked. I pointed at the wall, those scratches. Also, they smell like old socks. The dungeon tested us again. A hallway lined with dart traps hidden in walls, floor, and ceiling. I rolled a goblin bone down the hallway to trigger every angle, then crawled through in a pattern too stupid to look intentional. By the time I reached the other side, my action chain triggered so hard my vision flashed gold. Level 45. We found the boss chamber, its door carved with a wolf skull. Standard hobgoblin brute, the instructor said, relaxing. It was not a hobgoblin brute. It was a stone-backed wolf the size of a truck, with green flame in its mouth. The instructor went pale. That is not standard. The wolf roared, and the roar hit like a physical wave. The door slammed shut behind us. Boss chambers always loved their drama. Grant's lightning scattered off the wolf's stone plating. Harper's flame was swallowed by the beast's own green fire. Nothing that moved was invincible. Movement meant parts, parts meant timing, and timing meant theft. I sprinted straight across its path and threw my whole supply pack into its face, spilling rope, knives, and 1 rubber duck. The duck squeaked against the wolf's nose, and for half a second, ancient dungeon beast and rubber toy simply stared at each other. That half second was enough. I slid under its chest, jabbed knives into its soft belly as handles, and looped the rope through them. Owen cut the rope near me, leaving the other end whipping around the wolf's injured leg. Harper's fire hardened the loose rope into a burning knot, and Grant's lightning, trying to steal the finish, locked the wolf's own muscles. The beast collapsed. Harper's flame slammed into its exposed mouth. Owen's aura pierced its core, and it shattered into fading stone. Experience flooded the chamber. My skill chimed so violently I nearly blacked out. Level 50. New passive unlocked. Overflow body. My stats could now exceed the normal level limits. Harper walked over and offered a hand. For the first time since my awakening, she looked at me like I was dangerous. Not strong, dangerous. After that dungeon, the academy could no longer call me useless. So they upgraded me to suspicious instead. Suspicious was better. Suspicious people get watched, but they also get challenged. And challenges were just experience wearing shoes. I accepted almost every sparring match offered, because the arena had rules, shields, and healers. It was the safest place to let arrogant people attack me. At level 60, I unlocked microstep. At level 67, I could shift direction so sharply that observers saw only after images. At level 74, I learned that clapping counted as 2 actions. If I changed the angle of each hand, half the academy started calling me a genius. Half called me a clown who had tricked luck into wearing his clothes. Grant stopped laughing entirely, and that worried me far more than his insults ever had. A loud enemy is a weather report. A quiet enemy is a trap being built. He challenged me publicly on a rainy afternoon, right in the training ground. Lightning already crawling across his shoulders. No tricks, no toys, he said. Fight me. Harper shook her head from beneath the awning. Owen mouthed the words, please do not. Sure, I said. The shield rose around us, and Grant smiled for the first time in weeks. You should have stayed a joke. He attacked before the final chime, lightning branching wide to dodge normally. But I had spent a month learning something nobody else cared about. Rain has rhythm, and every drop is an action waiting to be used. I stepped where the drops hadn't landed yet. Lightning grazed my sleeve and burned my arm. Pain sharpened the world around me. Grant fired again, wider this time, and I moved through the current like a bug inside a thunderstorm, always forcing it to split around me. I had polished my shoes with dungeon slime the night before, just enough to slide. I skated across the slickest patch of stone, dragging my fingers through the water and clapping a curtain of droplets between us. Grant fired directly into the water, and his own lightning spread through it, wrapping his face in a glowing net of his own making. I writhed. I didn't punch him. That would be predictable. I flicked his forehead with level 78 strength behind it. Grant flew backward, hit the shield, and landed on his hands and knees. The training ground went completely silent. No toys, I said. Rain was here before me. Grant stood up slowly, and his eyes weren't angry anymore. They were empty, and empty was far worse. He gathered black lightning at his fingertips, ignoring the instructor's shout to stop. Let's see if getting hit still helps, he said, and unleashed everything he had. The shield screamed. The ground vanished in white light. For 1 second, I couldn't dodge, couldn't think, couldn't breathe. Then the messages became a waterfall. Damage taken, +1. Muscle contraction, +1. Pain resisted, +1. Fear resisted, +1. I walked through the lightning, not because I was stronger than it, but because every fraction of pain was paying me. Every shock forced a reaction. Every reaction was an action. Level 80, 81, 82. My bones felt like glass in a forge, and I kept walking anyway. A stupid smile stitched onto my face. I reached him and put one smoking hand on his shoulder. My turn, I whispered. Then I collapsed. Not dramatic, not heroic. My legs simply resigned. The instructor tackled Grant and pinned his arms. Security crystals had recorded everything. Lethal force in a training duel. Grant was dragged away, screaming that I had cheated, and taken by the guards before sunset. I woke up in the infirmary, bandaged, with Owen asleep in a chair and Harper standing by the window. That was idiotic, she said. It worked, I answered. You almost died. Almost is where my build shines. She stared at me for a long moment, then laughed once, sharp and unwilling. You are the most terrifying rank I have ever met. The Academy healers measured my body after that duel, and every number came back beyond my level bracket. Growth rate, unknown. Unknown is a beautiful word when it's spoken by frightened experts. Guild scouts began watching from the balcony. Students stopped calling me useless where I could hear them. Owen dragged me to proper sword drills, because in his words, it would be tragic if I became a monster while still swinging sticks like a raccoon. He was right. A stick forgave nonsense. A sword demanded clean lines, balance, and respect. I hated that. I dropped it on my foot 7 times, gaining experience each time, while Owen looked ready to retire from our friendship. At level 90, I unlocked Split in 10, letting my body run tiny actions without stealing my full attention. At level 100, something broke, not in a bad way. Normal cap reached. Overflow body active. Cap exceeded. Level 101. The air around me bent slightly. I blinked, and the blink made a small wind. I snapped my fingers, and the sound cracked the window. Level 100 was supposed to be the mortal limit, unless a person evolved through rare blessings or divine artifacts. I had stepped over it quietly in my socks. The next day I wore weighted clothes and moved slowly, pretending the world hadn't become fragile in my hands. That lasted 6 hours. A dungeon break tore open downtown during lunch, spilling black mist and spider monsters onto a crowded street. The academy alarm shrieked. Students ran toward shelter. I ran toward the break. Owen caught up beside me, sword aura already burning. You are not going alone. I was not going alone, I said. I was going fast. Harper landed ahead of us in a burst of flame. Civilians first, she said. No argument, no drama. The spiders moved like hanging puppets, all legs and hunger, shooting sticky threads that hardened into black cords. Perfect. Threads meant lines. Lines meant angles. Angles meant a playground. I caught to threads, wrapped them around a street lamp, and sprinted in a circle until the spiders tangled together like ugly balloons. Then a bus tilted over a cracked overpass, people trapped inside, and a spider queen crawled beneath it, belly glowing with eggs. Harper couldn't reach it, blocked by a net of black thread. Owen kept cutting, but more threads replaced each cut. I have a terrible idea, I said. Owen groaned. Can you ever have a good one? Good ideas are expensive. Terrible ideas are free. I tied for spider threads around my waist and jumped straight off the overpass, falling toward the queen. At the last second I kicked off a building wall and swung under the bus like a pendulum. the threads dragging the queen off balance behind me. I punched through a window and grabbed the frame. My shoulder nearly tore out. Level 108. I planted both feet against the bus and pushed upward. It stopped falling. The passengers screamed louder, which was fair. I flicked a spider thread into the bus wheel, kicked it spinning, and the thread wound tight around the axle, pulling from the queen's own web. Its own web connected to the overpass, the street lights, the bus, and me. I pulled once, and the whole net shifted, peeling open above the queen. Harper dropped through the gap, both fists blazing like a meteor, and the queen vanished in red light. The shockwave blasted me straight through the bus window. I landed upside down between two terrified civilians, one leg caught in a seat handle. A child stared at me. I waved. "Please exit calmly," I said. Owen cut the doors open. Harper held the overpass together with fire-melted braces. By evening, the city had a new favorite clip. The rank F who used spiderweb like a grappling hook, stopped a bus from falling, and got blasted through a window like it was all part of the plan. It was not part of the plan, but I smiled in the clip, so nobody knew. That night, a message arrived through Owen. Grant had escaped his transport. Of course he had. Some people take consequences as dares. For the weeks he vanished, and for the weeks I trained like someone was coming to stab me in the dark, because someone probably was. At level 120, I unlocked Action Echo. A perfectly repeated motion could leave a brief afterimage carrying a fraction of real force. Owen tested it with me in the private arena, swinging his aura sword at an empty spot while I tapped his shoulder from behind. "I hate your skill," he said. The attack came 3 nights later, in the old train district. Broken tracks between dark warehouses. I knew Grant would choose somewhere like that. Shadows, metal, no witnesses. So I brought witnesses. Not people, cameras. I had hidden 12 recording crystals across the district, in gutters, and a vending machine. Inside a broken billboard mascot's eye socket. I also wore rubber-soled shoes, carried chalk dust, packed smoke pellets, strung fishing line between the signal post, and placed one rubber duck on the tracks. The duck wasn't tactical, it was tradition. Grant stepped from the darkness, his lightning darker now, edged in purple. "You ruined me," he said. "You tried to kill me in front of everyone," I answered. He attacked, dark lightning tearing across the rails. I threw chalk dust into the air, and for 1 second I saw the current glow like a river. He rushed me faster than before, clearly having leveled somewhere illegal, doing ugly things to desperate people. I dropped a smoke pellet. He filled it with lightning, exactly what I wanted. Electricity and smoke showed every gap, and I moved through them. My action echoes split off like silver ghost. Grant struck echo after echo, each miss making him angrier, each angry strike hitting more metal. I hooked his ankle with a fishing line and kicked the signal post. The line snapped tight, and his lightning surged instinctively into the old rail. I clapped my hands onto the rubber duck, sitting on a hidden copper loop, and Grant's own lightning flooded the redirected signal system. Every red light in the district turned on at once. So did every recording crystal. So did the old warning siren. Grant froze in a circle of red light, captured on 12 crystals attacking me first. Right as the guards arrived, exactly on schedule. "You planned all of this," he said, staring at me like I had cheated reality. "I planned 8 versions. You chose the funniest one." He was taken away in mana-absorbing chains, under enough guard that even he understood the hint. I didn't feel triumphant watching him go. I felt relieved. Then I felt hungry. The next morning, the city stopped calling me Rank F like it was an insult. They started calling me the +1 hunter. I hated it immediately. Owen loved it so much he bought a shirt. Harper pretended not to laugh and failed every single time. Fame is another kind of dungeon. It has cameras instead of goblins, and the final boss is your own ego wearing expensive shoes. I didn't have time for it, because black gates had started appearing. And black gates were different. They didn't pulse. They didn't leak. They opened like wounds, and stayed silent. The first black gate opened above an old amusement park outside the city. Survivors spoke of floating platforms and a tower that rearranged itself around sound. The guilds called it the Mirror Spire. I called it free experience with stairs. The raid council wanted only S ranks. I had no clean category, no guild badge, so they left me off the list. So I joined the supply caravan instead, carried boxes, checked ropes, and walked straight through the gate, while everyone assumed someone else had approved me. People don't look closely at whoever is carrying the heavy things. The Mirror Spire rose from a lake of black glass, a tower of floating floors where every surface reflected a slightly delayed version of reality. Harper found me among the supplies. "You were not selected," she said. "I selected myself." The first floor forced everyone to fight a mirrored version of themselves, delayed by half a second. copying every skill perfectly. My reflection raised a hand. I lowered mine half a second before it copied me. This wasn't a fight. This was a metronome. I moved in a chain of tiny broken actions, and my reflection copied everyone. Always one beat too late, and I attacked the gap every single time. I flicked its forehead, and it shattered. Floor 1, clear. I am very annoying to copy, I told the stunned raiders. Floor 2 brought glass knights whose shields reflected every direct attack. Back at the person who threw it. I angled a broken mirror shard to reflect one knight's own reflection into another knight's shield, and the two of them stabbed each other through the chest. The knights learned fast, all 20 turning toward me at once. I ran, bouncing reflections between shard and shield and floor and ceiling. Harper flashed fire from my angles. Owen sliced pillars into reflective panels exactly where I signaled. For the first time, we moved like a real party. I threw 6 shards downward. Harper ignited them midair, and every knight below stabbed toward a different lie, shattering each other in the crossfire. Floor 2, clear. Level 136. Floor 3 was worse. No monsters, just endless white stairs, each step making the body heavier. Gravity climbing with every 100 steps. By step 1000, even the S ranks were sweating. I was laughing, and leveling, and very happy about it. This place is paying me to use my legs, I told Owen, sweat dripping off his chin. I hate that I understand you now, Harper groaned. At step 30,000, the stairs began cracking behind us, and one injured raider slipped where nobody could reach him in time. Nobody except me. I crossed 20 steps in a blink, grabbed his wrist, and felt my own shoulder tear as the stairs collapsed into white mist below. Harper blasted heat beneath me for lift, and I landed on the next step and rolled. Level 140. Only 6 of us reached the silver door at the top. Behind it waited a mirror angel with 6 glass wings, and floating reflections of every attack from the raid. Seeing Grant's lightning float there, mirrored and hungry, made my stomach tighten in a way I didn't expect. The angel raised its sword, and every reflection fired at once. My own action echoes sprinted at me from 3 directions, which felt deeply rude. The tower had learned from floor 1, predicting my rhythm instead of copying it with delay. Predictable chaos was just a pattern with bad manners. So I stopped being clever and became an idiot on purpose, jumping for no reason, throwing my sword upward, slapping my own cheek, sneezing on command. The copies hesitated. Nobody can predict a man who weaponizes his own embarrassment. At level 145, action chain evolved into 1,000-fold chain. Grinding burst of acceleration for every 1,000 unique actions in combat. I triggered it under a sword slash, and the world slowed to red ribbons and silver rain. I ran up the flat of the angel's own blade. The angel's prediction followed my sword when I threw it away, so I punched its blank face instead, and the mask cracked wide open. Harper's fire poured through the crack. Owen's aura followed. The angel screamed without a mouth, and its wings shattered. The whole tower shook, and the boss fell backward into the black glass lake, dragging half the platform down with it. A diamond of silver light appeared above us, the core, and I reached for it before anyone else could. Clear reward acquired. Mirror step. For 1 second, every reflection around me became a possible foothold. The tower began collapsing exactly then, because dungeons never learn to end politely. I grabbed Harper's wrist with one hand and Owen's hoodie with the other, and jumped straight off the falling platform. Mirror step activated. My foot landed on a reflection of a platform instead of the platform itself, cracking, but holding just long enough. We bounced across shield fragments, sword shards, and droplets of black glass, hitting the real world sideways and rolling to a stop. The mirror spire closed behind us, the black gate was cleared, and the city called it a miracle. "You are not rank F," Harper said, watching the last black spark vanish. "Yes, I am," I said. The crystal was honest. Everyone else was lazy. After the mirror spire, nobody could ignore me anymore, and that was deeply inconvenient. Guilds sent invitations. Sponsors sent gifts. Reporters hid outside the academy, shouting +1 hunter across the street. I refused every guild. I had seen what happened when strong people got comfortable in big chairs, mistaking power for a throne instead of a tool. And black gates kept multiplying. 3 more opened across the region within a month, each one different, each one deadly, each one paying beautifully. I cleared a factory gate by turning assembly belts into monster launchers, feeding a fire-eating golem thousands of sparks until it overflowed and burped molten metal. I cleared a lake gate full of invisible eels by learning to read ripples like a map, baiting the eel king into chasing my own reflection across the water. I cleared a subway gate crawling with sound-sensitive bats by weaponizing complete silence, luring the bat queen with a single crinkled snack wrapper. By the time the third black gate closed, I was level 180, and I had stopped asking what a normal limit was supposed to be. Normal had never done anything for me. My body had become something else entirely, sprinting up walls, catching arrows I could see coming. But power attracts people who think stealing is easier than climbing. A group of fallen hunters cornered me in a parking garage, thinking fame meant I carried rare treasure. They didn't know I spent my money on floorboards. They attacked together. I slid under a hammer swing and kicked it into a pipe, letting the steam blind the second attacker straight into his own friend. I turned a third attacker's own trap of concrete roots into a staircase, danced up it, and appeared behind their leader using the reflection in his own terrified eyes. Boo, I whispered. He fired point blank, missed, and hit a security crystal instead, recording everything in bright blue light. Guards found all 5 of them hanging upside down from pipes by their own belts, while I sat on a car hood eating fries. A second group tried to ambush Harper to reach me. That was a terrible decision, because Harper does not enjoy being used as bait. By the time I arrived, half the alley was melted, and every attacker stood trapped inside a ring of harmless but deeply humiliating pink flame. A third group followed me for 3 hours while I bought gum, tied my shoes, untied them, and tied them again, farming experience the entire time. I herded them straight into Harper and Owen, who stood waiting with a very disappointed expression already prepared. Evil people expected power to be direct, a punch, a beam, a dramatic duel in the rain. Instead they got rubber ducks, wet floors, and shoelaces. And while I was humiliating criminals one afternoon at a time, something far bigger was already moving above the ocean. The largest black gate yet opened over the harbor. A massive circular door of black stone ringed in blue fire, floating above the waves. Ships couldn't approach it. Aircraft lost power nearby. No monsters came out. Instead, it projected a path of floating platforms straight into the sky. At the top, beyond the clouds, waited a fortress shaped like a broken moon. The guilds called it the Lunar Citadel. I called it stairs with extra drama. This time, nobody tried to keep me out. They were too afraid I'd find a worse way in anyway. The whole city gathered to watch as we began climbing the floating platforms. Ocean wind trying to peel us off the sky itself. This one feels different, Harper said, mana pressing against my teeth even from a distance. I nodded. It did. Pale swordsmen with crescent masks and blades of moonlight met us on the third platform, moving in beautiful, predictable arcs. I threw ball bearings across the platform, and their perfect stances turned into confused, sliding flops. Owen finished what I started. Platforms rose higher, gravity shifting sideways at random, turning every step into a small argument with the sky. Other raiders slowed. I sped up. At the halfway point, a moon whale made of stone and mist rose from the clouds, and its song dragged old memories out of everyone in the raid. I felt it too. Awakening day, the gray light, the laughter, grand smile. My knees bent under the weight of it. I looked at the whale and laughed instead. Bad song, I said, and started clapping deliberately offbeat. Owen struck his sword in counterbeat. Harper added tiny fire pops like drums. The whale's perfect pattern warped, and it descended, angry now. I sprinted straight into its open mouth. Its throat became a tunnel of pale stone and glowing runes, gravity twisting with every pulse of its song. Deep inside, I found its crystal heart, orbited by dozens of small moon mirrors. My favorite kind of crime scene. I mirror stepped from surface to surface, circling faster and faster, cutting not the heart, but the reflections around it, making the whale hear its own song backward. Outside, Harper's flame struck its forehead, Owen's aura split the crack, and inside, I punched the heart myself. The whale sneezed me out across open sky, screaming with absolutely no dignity, and Harper caught me before I fell too far. The lunar citadel waited above, a courtyard of black stone and white trees, hundreds of masked figures standing between us and the throne at its end. On that throne sat the citadel lord himself, calm, pale, silver-haired, a name carved in light above his head. Silas. Climbers, he said, his voice smooth enough to be a trap. Offer your strongest, and I may let the rest fall gently. The massed army moved, and the courtyard exploded into fire, sword arcs, and stolen weapons turned against their own owners. Harper launched herself at Silas first, her flame spiraling into a punch hot enough to whiten stone. He lifted one finger, and her flame simply bent away. Owen attacked from the side. A thin black line cut through his aura and sent him skidding backward, across the tiles. Silas controlled direction itself. Fire bent, blade slipped, bodies lost balance mid-step. Force went wherever he wanted it to go. You are the small motion, he said, looking at me for the first time with real interest. You are the tall problem, I answered. He tilted the courtyard, and my body lurched sideways as gravity and momentum stopped agreeing with each other. I adjusted. He doubled the force. I adjusted again. I walked forward in broken pieces: toe, heel, knee, shoulder, breath, twist. Every correction to his stolen physics feeding my skill. He slashed, and the cut changed the direction of everything between us. My own sword leaping out of my hand. I let it fly exactly where his field wanted it. I mirror stepped off its blade midair, dropped from above, and kicked him square in the chest. He slid back one step. One. The entire raid gasped like I had moved the mountain. Wonderful, Silas said, and laughed. Do not encourage me, I answered. I couldn't overpower him, so I made him work. I attacked from stupid angles, bounced off blades and masks, threw broken weapons just to force his hand. Harper bent her fire around him, not through him. Owen loosened the tiles beneath his feet for me to kick skyward. For once, we truly fought as one. Silas finally took 2 steps back, then 3, and opened his left hand. Every weapon, every spark, every raider froze midair, except my heartbeat. Enough, he said, and the frozen force snapped inward, pulling everyone toward him like the world had become a drain. I let myself be pulled fastest, wrapping both arms around him before he expected an attack. What are you doing? He demanded. Ruining your posture. I tapped every finger against his back as fast as possible, forcing his own field to redirect a body it couldn't simply throw away. He tried to push me left, up, down, and every correction fed my level bar. 190. 191. Now, I shouted over his shoulder. Harper and Owen struck together, and Silas redirected both attacks away from his own body, exactly as he was supposed to. That was why I had wrapped myself around him. The redirected fire and ore curved straight into the weak echoes clinging to his back. The combined strike erupted upward from an angle he had never protected, and the throne shattered as the courtyard split from end to end. Silas stood among the ruins, coat torn, black eyes burning, a glowing crack running from shoulder to ribs, injured and furious. He raised both hands, and above us, his lunar engine unfolded in the sky, rings of moonstone rotating around a core of cold light. He wanted to drop the entire fortress into the harbor. No speech, no hidden agenda, just a monster who couldn't stand losing. That made things simple. Stop the engine, do it fast, preferably without dying in the process. Fall, Silas said, and gravity vanished entirely. The citadel flipped, the sky became the floor, and people screamed as they fell upward. I kicked off floating stone, mirror-stepped, used action echo, turning a battlefield of broken gravity into something that felt exactly like my own bedroom. 3 rotating rings fed the engine's core with moonlight. Do not break them, I told Harper. Make them dizzy instead. I launched myself onto the outer ring and ran with its spin, every balance correction pain, every footfall feeding thousand-fold chain again and again. I touched the ring with hand, elbow, sword, boot heel, creating tiny disruptions in its rotation until it began to wobble. Silas appeared ahead of me on the ring, blade raised. You cannot outrun the moon, he said. Watch me make it awkward, I answered. I dropped flat and let the spin carry me under his blade, then kicked his wrist from below. His blade tilted 1 inch, and Harper's flame struck exactly there. The outer ring cracked, and moonlight spilled sideways as the engine screamed. I jumped to the middle ring, already bleeding, already smiling. My action echoes multiplied around me, tricking the ring's rotation into fighting forces that weren't fully real. And it wobbled faster than the first. Silas caught me with 1 slash across the side. Pain exploded, and I nearly fell, catching the ring with 3 fingers above an ocean upside down in the sky. I swung back up, slammed my forehead into the ring for no reason but the unique action it earned, and the acceleration burst triggered instantly. I circled the middle ring 12 times from 12 different angles, then leapt clear as Harper and Owen hit the weak point together, shattering it. 1 ring remained, small, close to the core, spinning so fast it looked solid. Silas landed between me and it, no longer elegant, only broken and hateful. You are nothing, he said. The words should have hurt. Once they might have. Now they just sounded like every voice from Awakening Day. I know, I said. That is why I fit everywhere. He rushed me without refined control this time, wanting only to end it. His blade cut across my chest. I stumbled backward onto the inner ring. I stopped resisting the spin, and my body became part of the circle, 1 hand dragging the ring. Feet tapping, spine twisting, breath cut into counted pieces. The core's light reflected me into 100 positions at once. Mirror step opening on every surface, action echoes filling the circle like a crowd of ghosts. I appeared behind him, tied his own coat to the ring with a stolen chain, and kicked him forward into his own momentum. His direction field flared instinctively, bending force away from his body exactly as always. Except this time I had aimed him straight at the engine's core. Harper's fire and Owen's aura struck the shield right as it cracked, and I added the smallest attack of all, a single finger flick, timed perfectly between their impacts. The core shattered. Moonlight burst outward. Silas screamed as the engine collapsed entirely around him. I was thrown into open sky, spinning through silver fire with zero dignity and excellent experience. Efficiency. Level to 100. Passive upgrade acquired. Existence chain. Breathing, heartbeat, and conscious motion now generated experience continuously during combat. The lunar citadel dissolved into moon dust and harmless stone rain, burning away long before it ever reached the harbor below. Silas still clung to a broken slab near the exposed gate core, reaching for it with one trembling, cracked hand. I mirror-stepped between falling shards, chaining reflections to small to matter, until I arrived upside down above him just in time. I didn't punch him. I simply tapped his hand aside with 2 fingers, and the core drifted quietly into my own palm instead. Clear reward acquired. Lunar vector. For 1 heartbeat, I understood direction not as a rule, but as a handle. I used it immediately, changing the direction of his fall, not into the ocean, not into the city, but sideways through the closing gate's prison fold. It wasn't gentle, but it kept him from ever hurting anyone else again. He vanished screaming a name he had never earned the right to keep. The gate collapsed, the sky cleared, and I fell for real this time. No platforms left. No clever trick waiting in my pocket. Harper caught me in a pillar of fire. Owen caught us both with a sword driven into the deck like a bridge, and all 3 of us crashed onto a rescue ship. Never again, Owen whispered, staring at the sky. Which part? I asked. All parts, he said. Every part. The entire concept of you. The harbor erupted in cheers below us, ships sounding their horns, people crying. Raiders lifting weapons toward a sky that had almost fallen on them. Victory didn't feel like a crown. It felt like lying on a cracked deck with 2 furious friends and a skill that chimed because I dared to keep breathing. Before the ship even reached the dock, the next problem crawled out of the smoke. Disasters never travel alone. I tried to sit up. My ribs disagreed loudly. Harper pushed my shoulder back down with 2 fingers. Stay, she said. I stared at her hand. Did you just command me like a dog? Existence chain, I realized then, wasn't just an upgrade. It was unfair. Breath fed heartbeat, heartbeat fed motion, motion fed the very next breath. Someone noticed the lunar core still resting in my open hand. A marble of midnight wrapped in silver threads. Most people watching me were honest hunters. I wasn't one of them anymore, apparently, because I spotted the first thief in a puddle of seawater beside my own head. Before he ever got close, I let my hand relax. The core rolled half an inch across my palm. His eyes sharpened immediately. Greedy people are such simple machines. Owen loudly announced how completely helpless I was right now, and left a beautiful, obvious gap for the thief to take. He lunged with a hooked dagger. I opened my fingers, let the core fall, and used lunar vector to turn falling straight into sideways. His hand missed it entirely, his momentum carrying his face straight into the deck beside me with a sound like dropped fruit and bad decisions. Harper froze one accomplice's ankles in cold flame. Owen sliced the second one's belt clean through. I lifted 1 finger and yanked a rope round the third. He dangled beneath the gangplank, screaming, until guards finally noticed and dragged all 3 away in iron cuffs, still insisting I had tricked them. I had, and nobody cared. By midnight, I was on the dock doing slow breathing drills, turning even recovery into a farmable routine. Harper called it choosing peace. I called it grinding. The lunar core kept tugging in my pocket, pointed toward the old warehouses on the eastern pier. Toward people, not toward a new gate. Those thieves on the ship hadn't been random. They had been scouts, and a smart person would report that and wait for backup. I was a smart person. I reported it. Then I became the backup anyway. Inside the largest warehouse, I found the setup exactly as expected, a fake injured hostage. Hidden hooks, binding nets, and mirrors deliberately cracked to stop reflection movement. Broken mirrors, everyone always forgets. Don't stop mirror step. They multiply it. I dropped from a roof beam, not into their trap, but directly onto the chair behind the fake hostage. Good evening, I said. I heard there was a terrible plan happening without me. The first binding net missed me and caught the hostage instead. I am on your side, he shouted. That seems like your first mistake, I answered. I used lunar vector on my own chair leg, sliding sideways just as the second net fired, catching 3 raiders rushing from the left instead. Harper burned through the third net midair. Owen finished it into ribbons before it ever reached her. Then I jumped straight into the hook circle on purpose into the exact trap they had built. Every raider froze, confused by a target who chose the obvious danger button willingly. The hook snapped up, and chains caught my arms and legs. I pulled against every single one, and every tiny struggle counted. Existence chains sprinting my level bar forward. They released to dungeon hounds. I used lunar vector to turn the first one's leap into a straight upward collision with the ceiling beam. The second hound I tripped mid-pounce with my own chain, sending it rolling into 6 raiders like a smoky bowling ball. A knife meant to cut my throat instead cut the chain around my arm. "Thank you," I said, freeing my hand. The man looked horrified at his own accidental kindness. I spun the free chain into a silver circle, redirecting every swing at impossible angles, and finally pulled every remaining chain inward at once, tearing the hooks from the floor. The raiders leapt together. I jumped just enough, and one lunar vector twist sent their combined momentum crashing into each other beneath my feet. Harbor guards arrived a minute later, dragging every raider away tied in their own nets, while I sat quietly on top of the pile they'd made themselves. He rested aggressively, Owen told the guards, pointing at the ruined warehouse. That should have been the end of the night. It was not. The lunar core pulsed once, hard, and the water beyond the pier sank into a perfect spinning bowl. At its center, a gate opened like an eye. A monster rose from beneath it, glass scales, moonlit fins, a skull like a cathedral bell, coiling around 3 dock towers with half its body still submerged. A glass leviathan. The city had barely survived a falling fortress, and now the harbor had grown a decorative apocalypse of its own. Owen grabbed the back of my jacket. Absolutely not. You are not fighting the fish cathedral with broken ribs. The leviathan opened its mouth, and a sound like a church organ rolled out, shattering every glass window along the harbor at once. I lifted the lunar core and twisted my wrist, and every falling shard near me changed direction, circling into a glittering halo around my body. It slammed its tail into the water, and a wave taller than a building rushed toward the docks. I ran straight between Harper and Owen toward it. I threw my entire halo of glass into the wave, giving the water 1,000 tiny directions to argue with, then bent its center upward with lunar vector. The wave split, not perfectly. I was never a god, just a bleeding idiot with a marble. But it passed over the docks, a silver rain instead of a crushing wall. The leviathan's scales opened like petals, releasing hundreds of smaller crystal fish, each one mirroring its pulse in perfect, deadly rhythm. A rhythm, my favorite kind of crime. I tied a rope round my waist, told Owen I couldn't say the plan out loud or he'd tackle me, and jumped straight into the swarm. The ocean swallowed me. Cold hit my broken ribs like a hammer. An existence chain caught the rhythm instantly. Heartbeat, click, bubble, twist, all of it pain. Mirror step opened inside the swarm itself, using the reflections on each crystal fish's body as tiny doors, one glint to the next. I stopped fighting the small fish and became their conductor instead, bending their pattern one pulse at a time until the whole swarm spun into a drill of glass and moonlight. Then I pointed them straight back at their own master, and the leviathan swallowed half of them by accident, the rest cracking its own scales on impact. Harper and Owen dragged me across the surface on the rope like the world's worst fishing prize, and the leviathan struck, jaws wide, trying to swallow everything. I waited, because timing is just patience with better shoes, then rolled sideways as its bite closed on the rope instead, half severing it. I tied the fraying end around one of its glass teeth and kicked it, not to break it, just to make the beast angry enough to drag me upward with it. I climbed the rope hand over hand toward its throat, my levels surging with every motion, a new passive forming quietly inside existence chain. Combo weight increased by danger proximity. In simple words, the closer I came to being eaten, the better the reward. Amazing. Horrible. Very on brand. Deep in its throat, I found the leviathan's true heart protected by rotating ribs of crystal, and I held the lunar core between 2 of them. Its throat charged another sound wave strong enough to flatten the docks. I turned the direction inward instead, sending its own roar straight back into its chest. Every scale on its body lit up at once, and cracks spread from its throat down its entire length. Glowing blue through the glass from within. I was thrown clear by the backblast, spinning through open air with zero dignity and excellent experience efficiency once again. Harper caught my collar midair. Owen caught her ankle with his sword hooked into a crane. All 3 of us swung together as the leviathan collapsed into the whirlpool below. It shattered in pieces, each glass scale dissolving into harmless rain long before it touched the city, and a blue crystal heart floated free from the wreckage. An escaped raider lunged for it with wide, greedy eyes. I spat a mouthful of sea water and used lunar vector to nudge the heart 1 inch out of his reach. 1 inch. Always 1 inch. He tripped on his own chain and face planted into a pile of wet rope, and the heart drifted quietly into my open hand instead. Clear reward acquired. Abyss breath. My lungs opened like doors, Salt water vanished from my throat. For one perfect second, breathing felt like something bigger than air. We fell into a pile of fishing nets together, exhausted. You defeated a sea monster by making it yell at itself, Harper said. Self-reflection is important, I answered. A week later, the academy held a ceremony, and Harper dragged me there by the collar when I tried to skip it. The same awakening hall stood packed again, same glass dome, same banners, same crystal platform, but a completely different silence waiting inside it. I stood exactly where I had once stood with gray light on my palm and laughter ringing in my ears. Nobody laughed this time. Guild leaders watched from the back with hungry eyes. Owen wore his +100 shirt beneath his jacket, because betrayal comes in many forms. I placed my hand on the crystal one more time. It flashed gray, then silver, then gold, then black, then every color at once. And the whole hall shook. Skill, +1 experience per action. Rank of the silence that followed was absolutely perfect. Then a second line appeared. Level, unreadable. Growth, continuing. Limit, not found. The crystal cracked straight down the middle beneath my palm. I pulled my hand away and looked at the trembling examiner. Do I have to pay for that? Owen made a choking sound behind me. Harper turned away, shoulders shaking with laughter. The hall erupted, not with laughter this time, but with shouting, questions, fear, and something close to awe. I didn't stay for any of it. I walked down the same stairs where I had first realized breathing itself could pay, one step at a time. Outside, sunlight fell warm on my face, and the sky stretched clear above the city that had once laughed me off a glowing circle. Gates still hung in the far distance, cracks waiting to widen. Somewhere out there, more monsters were sharpening claws. More arrogant hunters were deciding what they could take. I had started as the joke at the bottom of the ranking board. I had walked, blinked, breathed, cooked, tripped, bled, and laughed my way past every cap anyone worshipped. One experience point was nothing, only if a person decided to stop at one. I never had any intention of stopping. Owen caught up beside me, grinning like the idiot I had always known him to be. So what now? He asked. Harper looked toward the horizon, where a faint violet crack had just appeared above the distant mountains. That gate is new, she said quietly. I rolled my shoulders and watched the crack widen, catching one glimpse of a staircase spiraling upward through storm clouds, guarded by a beast with too many eyes. My smile came back before I could stop it, and Owen groaned immediately at the sight of it. You're banned from smiling at dangerous architecture. Harper's flames flickered quietly to life beside me. He is already planning something, she said, not even looking away from the horizon. I started walking toward it anyway, the same way I had started everything, one small, deliberate step at a time. Planning, I said. I am just breathing. And breathing, as it turned out, had never once stopped paying me back. Every hunter in that city remembered the boy who awakened gray and was laughed off a glowing circle, without a single word of protest. Every guild remembered the fortress that fell from the sky and somehow never touched the harbor beneath it. Every criminal who ever thought fame meant treasure remembered exactly how quickly a rubber duck could end a very bad plan. And every instructor who once told me to stay behind the S ranks remembered the day a supply runner cleared a boss chamber before anyone else even moved. None of it happened because I was chosen by some grand power, some ancient bloodline, some hidden royal blade waiting inside me all along. It happened because a gray crystal gave me exactly one honest thing, and honest things, used enough times, stopped being small at all. Gran had believed strength was something handed to a person on the very first day, a gift measured once and never questioned again. Silas had believed direction itself belonged only to those elegant enough to bend it without ever breaking a sweat. The Leviathan had believed its own song was a weapon no creature could ever turn back around against it. Every single one of them had underestimated the exact same thing. 1 point of experience, repeated without any shame at all. I had never been the strongest person in any single room I ever walked into. I had simply refused to stop moving, refused to stop breathing on purpose, refused to let one gray word define the shape of everything that came after it. Harper had called me terrifying once, and she wasn't wrong. But terrifying was never the goal. Consistent was the goal. Terrifying was just what consistency looked like from the outside. Owen had called me a cult of one person pacing circles around a bed, and he wasn't wrong either. Every legend starts somewhere small and slightly ridiculous. The Academy had called me useless, then suspicious, then dangerous, then finally, quietly, something they no longer had a word for at all. I preferred it that way. Words are cages. And Rankef had already taught me exactly how little a single word was ever worth trusting. Somewhere behind me, the awakening hall still buzzed with shouting voices and a cracked crystal. Nobody could quite explain. Ahead of me, a violet gate widened above distant mountains, patient, waiting. indifferent to whatever reputation I had built beneath it. It didn't care that I was famous now. It didn't care about ceremonies, cameras, or a shirt with my own nickname printed across the front. It was simply a staircase, guarded by beasts with too many eyes. And staircases had never once been anything other than an opportunity to me. Owen fell into step on my left, still grumbling about dangerous architecture and the concept of rest he swore I had never once respected. Harper fell into step on my right, flames low and steady, the kind of quiet that meant she had already decided to come along anyway. Neither of them asked if I was tired. They already knew the answer, and they already knew it wouldn't change a single thing about where we were walking. The city noise faded slowly behind us, replaced by wind, distant thunder from the gathering storm clouds, and the low hum of a gate that hadn't chosen its name yet. I thought about the boy who stood frozen on a glowing circle, palm pressed to a gray crystal, listening to an entire hall laugh at his own future. That boy hadn't known yet that laughter fades, that crowds forget, and that the only opinion which ever truly mattered was the skill's own quiet, endless counting. +1 for breathing, +1 for standing, +1 for choosing, every single time, to take one more step forward anyway. It never once promised me power. It only ever promised me that nothing I did would be wasted, and that turned out to be worth far more than any dragon flame. Harper had asked me once, half joking, half not, what I actually wanted out of all this climbing, all this bleeding, all this ridiculous farming of pain. I told her the truth. I wanted to keep finding out what happened next, because a gray crystal had once tried to tell me my story was already finished. It had been wrong about that from the very first second, and I intended to keep proving it wrong for as long as gates kept opening in front of me. The violet crack ahead pulsed once, steady, patient, exactly like a heartbeat waiting for someone reckless enough to answer it. I had been called reckless my entire life, first as an insult, then as a warning, and eventually, quietly, as something closer to respect. I didn't mind any of those versions. Labels changed. The county never did. Somewhere far below the mountains, a city slept peacefully, unaware that its safety had once depended entirely on a boy who paced circles around his own bed. They would never know most of it. The burned rice, the broken jump ropes, the countless nights spent tapping fingers just to see if anything at all was watching. That was fine. I hadn't done any of it to be remembered. I had done it because stopping had simply never once occurred to me as an option. Gran had wanted a throne. Silas had wanted control. The Leviathan had wanted dominance over an ocean it barely understood. I had only ever wanted one more action to count, and it turned out that wanting the smallest thing, repeated enough times, could outlast every single one of them. Owen glanced sideways at me as the storm clouds above the mountains began curling into something, with far too many shapes hidden inside it. "Are we really doing this again?" he asked, already knowing the answer before the words finished leaving his mouth. I looked at the golden-eyed beast waiting somewhere inside that spiraling staircase, and felt the same old chime settle quietly in my chest. +1, I said, smiling. Always +1. Harper sighed the way she always sighed right before agreeing to something she had already decided was inevitable anyway. "Fine," she said, "but this time, no rubber ducks." I didn't promise her that. Some traditions were far too important to abandon just because the stakes kept getting higher. We crossed the last stretch of open field together, 3 shadows moving steadily toward a crack in the sky that refused to wait for anyone. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of distant rain, and somewhere inside my chest, the skill chimed once more, patient as ever. Step +1 experience. It had never asked me to be extraordinary. It had only ever asked me to keep going, and that had turned out to be the rarest gift in the entire world. Every hunter who ever doubted me had made the exact same mistake, judging the size of the spark instead of counting how many times it struck. A single point of experience was nothing at all if a person only ever collected it once and quietly gave up. Mine had never once given up, not on Awakening Day, not against Grant's lightning, not inside a mirror spire built to erase every trace of who I was, not against a citadel lord who bent the very direction of the world, and not against a glass leviathan large enough to swallow half the harbor whole. Each fight had tried to prove the same tired lesson, that small things stay small forever, no matter how long they're allowed to survive. Each fight had ended with the exact same result instead, a gray rank still standing, still smiling, still quietly counting every single breath it took to get there. I wasn't naive enough to believe the violet gate ahead would be any different from the ones before it. It would test me exactly the same way every other gate had, with pressure, with fear, with 100 tiny moments where giving up would have felt so much easier. I had learned long ago that giving up never once earned a single point of experience, and that alone made it the only truly useless choice available to me. Harper's flame flickered brighter as we drew closer to the widening crack, casting long shadows across the grass behind all three of us. Owen tightened the strap on his sword, already muttering under his breath about staircases, gravity, and his own steadily graying hair. I said nothing at all, saving my breath for the climb, because even silence, I had learned, could still be turned into something worth counting. The gate pulsed once more, brighter this time, as though it had finally noticed exactly who was walking toward it. Good, I thought. Let it notice. Being noticed had stopped being expensive a long time ago. Now, it was simply the price of admission. We reached the base of the crack together, storm clouds swirling above us, golden-eyed shapes shifting patiently somewhere deep inside the spiral. I placed one hand against the shimmering edge of the gate, feeling that same familiar chime settle quietly beneath my skin. +1 experience. I smiled, stepped forward, and let the storm swallow all three of us whole. Because somewhere on the other side, another staircase was already waiting. And staircases, as I had learned the hard way, were never really obstacles at all. They were simply invitations, counted one honest step at a time. The gray crystal on Awakening Day had never been a curse. It had been the very first step of the staircase nobody else in that hall could see yet. Every laugh, every insult, every dismissive glance from that morning had simply been the sound of people standing still while I quietly started climbing. They had measured me once, on a single glowing circle, and decided that single measurement was the whole of my story. I had spent every day since then proving that a story measured only once was never a story worth trusting at all. Grant had needed inherited power to feel important. Silas had needed absolute control to feel safe. The Leviathan had needed size to feel unbeatable. I had needed none of that. I had only ever needed the next action, and the one honest chime that told me it had counted. That was the whole secret, if it could even be called one. Not talent, not luck, not some hidden bloodline waiting to awaken beneath the surface. Just one point claimed again and again, until the sheer number of them became something no single crystal could ever measure honestly again. The city behind me would keep calling me the +1 hunter, and I had long since stopped minding the sound of it. It wasn't the name I would have chosen for myself, but it was, in its own strange way, the most honest name anyone had ever given me. +1. Not plus everything. Not plus enough to matter on its own. Just +1, offered without apology, over and over. Forever. I thought of the examiner's frightened face at the ceremony. Staring at a cracked crystal, he had no words left to explain. I thought of Harper's hand, offered after a wolf collapsed into stone dust. The very first time she looked at me like I was truly dangerous. I thought of Owen's stupidest face, deployed perfectly on a rescue ship deck, buying me exactly the gap I needed to catch a careless thief. None of those moments had required a dragon's fire, a saint's blessing, or lightning crawling across borrowed knuckles. They had only ever required showing up again and again, long after everyone else assumed I had already been counted out for good. The violet staircase ahead of us kept spiraling upward, disappearing into storm clouds that promised nothing gentle waiting at the top. I didn't need gentle. Gentle had never once leveled me up in my entire life. I needed movement, resistance, one more action worth counting, and this gate, like every gate before it, was clearly prepared to offer plenty of both. Harper's flame steadied beside me, quiet confidence replacing the caution she used to carry every single time I suggested something reckless. Owen's sword hummed faintly at his side, no longer nervous, simply ready. The way old friends eventually become ready for absolutely anything together. We climbed the first few steps in silence, storm winds tugging at our clothes, golden eyes blinking somewhere far above in the swirling dark. I felt the familiar chime settle into rhythm with my own footsteps, patient, endless, exactly the same as it had been on the very first night. Step +1, step +1, step +1. It had never once needed to be more complicated than that, and somewhere along the way, I had finally stopped wishing it were. The world above the storm clouds pulsed once, bright and distant, like a heartbeat waiting patiently for someone reckless enough to answer it. I answered it the only way I had ever known how to answer anything at all. I kept walking. Behind us, the city lights flickered on one by one as evening settled quietly across rooftops that had no idea what waited above the clouds. They would sleep soundly tonight, the way they always did, trusting that someone reckless enough was already climbing toward whatever came next. They were right to trust that. They just never needed to know exactly how ridiculous the climbing usually looked from the inside. Rubber ducks, cracked chairs, borrowed lunch trays, and one very patient skill that simply refused to ever stop counting. That had always been enough. It had been enough on Awakening Day, enough against Grant, enough against a Citadel Lord who bent the world itself. It would be enough now too. Storm clouds or not, golden eyes or not. One more staircase spiraling into the unknown or not. Harper caught my eye briefly as thunder rolled somewhere far above the spiraling steps. Ready? She asked, though she already knew my answer. Born ready, I said. Actually, born counting. Ready came later. Owen groaned at that, the exact way he always groaned right before following me anyway. Without a single moment of real hesitation. We kept climbing together, 3 shadows against a violet storm, each step small, deliberate, and quietly, endlessly worth something. I didn't know what waited at the top of that staircase. I never really had, not once, not from the very beginning. I only knew that whatever it was, it would meet a boy who had long since stopped being afraid of gray light. And that boy, whatever else he had become, had never once forgotten how to simply keep breathing forward. Months later, people still ask me the same question, over and over, in interviews, in academy hallways, in quiet moments between gates. What was it like? They wanted to know. Standing on that circle and watching your own crystal turn gray in front of an entire laughing hall. I always gave them the same honest answer. It felt like the end of something right up until it turned out to be the very beginning instead. Nobody in that hall had been wrong about the color of my crystal. Gray was exactly what it looked like, and gray was exactly what it stayed. They had simply been wrong about what gray was allowed to become, given enough time, enough patience, and enough stubborn refusal to stop counting. Grant never returned to the academy. Whatever happened to him beyond that sealed prison fold, I never learned, and honestly, I never needed to. Silas remained sealed somewhere far beneath the harbor, his elegant control reduced to silence, his throne long since scattered across a shattered courtyard. The glass leviathans remained still, occasionally washed ashore as harmless shimmering dust, collected by children who had no idea what it had once tried to do. The Mirror Spire, the Lunar Citadel, the amusement park ruins, all of it slowly became stories told at academy dinners, softened by distance and time. I remembered every detail exactly as it happened, the pain, the fear, the ridiculous rubber ducks. Because forgetting felt like insulting every single point I had earned. Harper eventually stopped pretending she didn't smile at my nonsense, and simply let herself laugh openly whenever I did something spectacularly foolish. Owen stopped calling my methods insane and quietly started calling them with visible reluctance effective, which from Owen was practically a medal. The academy stopped measuring hunters purely by their awakening color, adding new categories nobody could quite name, simply because I refused to fit any existing ones. Younger students, the ones who awakened gray crystals of their own, started seeking me out instead of hiding in embarrassed corners the way I once had. I never gave them speeches about destiny or hidden potential. I only ever told them the same simple truth that had carried me this far. One point is nothing, only if you decide to stop at one. Some of them believed me immediately. Others needed to prove it themselves first, the exact same way I once had, pacing circles around beds nobody else could see. Either way, the number of gray crystals treated as jokes in that awakening hall slowly, quietly, began to shrink. That felt like a better legacy than any title, any fortune, any guild banner ever could have offered me. I still refused every guild invitation that arrived, and they still kept arriving anyway. Slightly more polite each time, slightly more desperate underneath the politeness. I preferred staying independent, chasing gates with Harper and Owen, answering to nobody's chair but my own stubborn sense of what came next. Black gates kept appearing across the region, each one different, each one deadly, each one, in its own strange way, simply another staircase waiting patiently. I cleared them one by one, sometimes elegantly, more often not, always leaving behind exactly one more absurd story for reporters to argue about afterward. The city's relationship with me remained complicated, somewhere between admiration, confusion, and a healthy, well-earned dose of nervous laughter. I preferred it exactly that way. Adoration made people careless. Nervous laughter, at least, kept everyone paying proper attention. Late one evening, long after the violet gate from the mountains had finally been cleared, Harper asked me a question she had clearly been holding onto for a while. "Do you ever think about what you'd have become if the crystal had turned gold instead?" she asked. Watching the sunset settle over rooftops we had once fought to protect. I thought about it honestly for the first time in a long time, and then shook my head. Probably someone lazier, I admitted. Gold would have handed me everything gray forced me to earn, one small point at a time. She considered that for a long moment, then smiled. The quiet kind of smile she rarely allowed anyone else to see. "Then I'm glad it was gray," she said simply, and left it exactly there, without needing to explain any further. Owen, overhearing from a few steps away, muttered that he was glad to, mostly because Gray had at least given him excellent stories to tell at parties. I threw a pebble at him. He caught it without looking, which was in its own quiet way Proof of exactly how far all three of us had come together. Some nights, I still returned to my old room, the same floorboards, the same little wall clock, the same worn path circling around my bed. I never fixed the cracked floorboard from the night I first crossed the level cap. I liked having it there, a small, honest reminder of where all of this actually started. Sometimes I still paced slow circles before sleeping, not because I needed the experience anymore, but because the habit itself had become something closer to comfort. Step +1. The chime still came, quiet and familiar, exactly as patient as it had been on the very first laughing morning. I had stopped needing it to prove anything to anyone else a long time ago. Now it simply felt like an old, reliable friend, keeping honest count beside me. The city eventually built a small plaque near the harbor, commemorating the day the lunar citadel fell without ever touching the water below it. It didn't mention my name specifically. It simply read, "To those who kept moving when everyone else believed it was already over." I liked that phrasing far more than I would have liked my own name carved into stone. Names get forgotten. Movement, somehow, never quite does. Every gray crystal that turned in that awakening hall after mine carried just a little less weight, a little less certainty about what it was supposed to mean. Examiners learned to wait a beat longer before writing anyone off entirely, just in case another gray flicker turned out to be something else in disguise. I never asked to become that kind of lesson. I had only ever wanted to keep breathing, keep moving, keep proving one gray word wrong. But lessons, it turns out, rarely ask permission before they decide to happen anyway. Harper eventually rose to lead her own hunting team, though she still answered every one of my ridiculous calls without a single moment of hesitation. Owen eventually stopped complaining about staircases, though he never once stopped complaining about my methods, which felt, honestly, exactly right. I never stopped being rank F, not officially. Not on any record the Academy still kept filed somewhere deep in its archives. I simply stopped letting that letter mean what everyone once assumed it had to mean. Rank was never really about the size of the spark someone was handed on their very first day, standing on a glowing circle. It was about whether that spark, however small, however gray, however laughed at, was ever allowed to simply stop lighting. Mine never did. Not once. Not through every gate, every fortress. Every enemy who assumed a single glance was enough to measure me completely. I had been measured once, on that very first morning, and the number they wrote down had been technically accurate the entire time. +1. They just never understood exactly how far a single honest point could travel. Given enough patience, enough stubbornness, and enough time. Years from now, I imagine some new student will stand exactly where I once stood, palm pressed against a humming crystal, waiting nervously for an answer. Maybe it will turn gray for them too. Maybe the whole hall will fall silent, then erupt into the exact same cruel laughter I once stood inside. I hope, if that day ever comes, someone remembers to tell them the only thing that ever actually mattered on my own worst morning. Gray isn't an ending. It's simply the very first honest count, waiting patiently to see if anyone is stubborn enough to keep going. I never became a saint, a dragon, or a blade made of pure moonlight. I never needed to. I became something quieter, something the Academy had never once found a proper category for, and something no crystal could measure in a single glance ever again. I became the sum of every small, honest action nobody else in that hall had ever bothered to count. And that, more than any dragon flame, any sword aura, any branching lightning, turned out to be more than enough. The city still calls gates open across the horizon, one after another, patient and endless, exactly the way they always have. I still walk toward every single one of them, Harper and Owen close behind. 3 shadows moving steadily against whatever storm waits above. I stop counting how many gates we've cleared together. Some numbers matter less than the simple fact of continuing to show up for the next one. What I never stopped counting, not once, not for a single day since that gray morning, was the quiet chime that started it all. +1 for standing, +1 for breathing, +1 for choosing, again and again, to keep walking forward anyway. It never asked me to be extraordinary from the very first moment. It only ever asked me to keep going, one honest action at a time. That turned out to be the rarest kind of gift the world could have ever handed someone standing, alone on a laughing, glowing circle. Not power, not glory, not a crown, a throne, or a crowd finally bowing in silent apology for every joke they once made at my expense. Just permission, quietly given to keep trying, long after everyone else in that hall had already decided the story was finished. I never accepted that ending. I'm not sure I ever will, no matter how many crowns, thrones, or cracked ceremonial crystals pile up behind me. Somewhere out there, another gate is already widening, patient as ever, indifferent to reputation, indifferent to fame, indifferent to any letter written on any record. I'll walk toward it the same way I walked toward the very first one small, deliberate, thoroughly counted step at a time. Harper will sigh. Owen will complain. Both of them will follow anyway, because that, more than any rank, is what actually held the three of us together. The gray crystal that once tried to end my story before it began now sits quietly cracked in an academy display case, a warning to nobody in particular. Students pause in front of it sometimes, reading the small plaque explaining exactly whose palm once shattered it during a routine remeasurement. Most of them walk away smiling. A few walk away thinking a little harder about their own gray crystals, waiting somewhere in their future. I hope they think harder. I hope every single one of them remembers that a crystal only ever measures the very first moment, never the whole story. The story, it turns out, belongs entirely to whoever keeps counting long after everyone else assumes there's nothing left worth counting at all. I was never chosen for greatness on that first laughing morning. I simply refused to accept that gray meant finished. Every single victory since then, every gate, every fortress, every impossible enemy, traces back to that one stubborn refusal, and nothing more complicated than that. People still ask me sometimes what my secret really is, expecting some hidden bloodline, some ancient artifact, some destiny quietly waiting beneath the surface. I tell them the truth every single time, even though most of them clearly expect a better answer. There is no secret. There is only the next action, counted honestly, and the stubborn refusal to ever let it be the last one. Some of them laugh, the same way that entire hall once laughed at a great crystal held in a trembling, disappointed hand. I let them laugh. Laughing people, I learned a long time ago, show their teeth, and close their eyes, and rarely notice who's still quietly counting beside them. The ones who stop laughing long enough to actually listen are usually the ones who go on to surprise everyone else eventually. I recognize that look now, the exact look I once carried myself, standing frozen on a glowing circle, watching an entire hall decide my story was already over. It never was over. It was simply beginning, disguised as the smallest, grayest, most disappointing color imaginable. Somewhere tonight, another gray crystal is about to turn in some other awakening hall, in some other city, held by someone who has no idea what waits ahead of them. I hope they pay circles around their own bed the very same night, testing every ridiculous idea their exhausted mind can offer. I hope they discover, exactly the way I did, that breathing counts, that blinking counts, that simply refusing to give up counts more than anyone ever warns you. I hope somebody, somewhere, tells them what nobody bothered telling me on that very first laughing morning. Gray isn't the end of your story. It's simply the very first honest number, waiting to see how far you're willing to carry it. I carried mine past every laughing crowd, every arrogant rival, every elegant villain convinced that direction itself belonged only to them. I carried it past fortresses, oceans, mirrored towers, and a moon-shaped citadel that genuinely believed it could fall on an entire city unopposed. I carried it because stopping, even once, felt like proving every single person who once laughed at me completely right. I was never going to give them that satisfaction. Not on that first morning. Not on any single morning that ever followed it afterward. So I kept walking. I kept breathing. I kept counting, one small, stubborn point at a time, long after anyone expected me to stop. That, in the end, was never really a curse dressed up as a skill. It was simply the truest thing anyone ever handed me. Everything counts if you refuse to let it stop mattering. I was the joke standing gray and disappointed on a glowing circle, and I became the reason that circle now means something entirely different. +1 for every breath, every step, every quiet refusal to accept an ending nobody had actually earned the right to write for me. I was rank F, and I was never, not for a single second of it, finished.